Yesterday, I received another crazy letter, unsigned and without a sender, postmarked San Francisco. Escher, you're an utter madman. Yes, utterly, beautifully mad. I thank the source of your madness, a math teacher. How on earth?
I feel uncertain when the sky is dark.
The hippies in San Francisco continue to print my work clandestinely. I managed to get hold of a couple of horrendous results through the mediation of a friendly customer who lives in that area. I cannot understand why the out-of-control youths of today appreciate my work so much. But it does get tiring after a while. I receive placemats with my work printed on them. They just go ahead and do it without asking me or being ashamed of it.
My first exposure to Escher was in either late '66 or early 1967. I was at my apartment in London, and there was a knock at the door. And a friend of mine, Eric Burden, who is a lead singer for the Animals, a very popular group, was on my doorstep with a book in his hand. And the book he had brought was one of the early Escher books. And I must tell you that I think it literally changed my life. So I called him, and I said, good morning, Mr. Escher. I don't want to disturb you. I'm an Englishman. I just wanted to let you know what a brilliant artist I think you are. And that's all I wanted to say. But then he said, I'm not an artist. And it was shocking to me to hear Escher tell me that he wasn't an artist, because, of course, I think he is. So I said, OK, if you're not an artist, what are you? He said, I'm a mathematician. And I thought, wow, he doesn't really know or understand how popular and why his work is so popular amongst all the younger generations.
Yesterday, I received a visit from English artists. He was dressed up like a clown in blue and red all over. She had full circles around her eyes. It's all very nice, these little love-ins. They came to offer me flowers. I don't understand it. They appreciate my work, while I don't care one bit for what they're making these days. You make op art. I don't even know what it is, op art. I've been making this work for years. I keep wandering around in riddles. On June the 17th, 1898, I was born here in Leeuwarden, in this stately home. The Prinsessenhof. I come from an exact sciences family, and I have the privilege of having parents who are not only educated, but wealthy as well. I am a vulnerable boy, and the pediatrician prescribes me a fairly long stay at the seaside, at the children's pension, Villa Groot Kijkduin. I also attend school there. The only bright spots are the drawing lessons. Not because I'm good at it, but because it's my only comfort during this awful time. The fear of not being able to keep up is the problem. After secondary school, I attend the Harlem School of Architecture and Decorative Arts. My graphics arts teacher is Yesurun de Mesquita. I owe a lot to him. He saw potential in my woodcuts, and after only 3 days, he forced a switch to continue in that direction. Had he not spoken with my parents, I would have continued in architecture. And I have never had an interest in building houses.
I'll be kissing her soon, oh Tennessee.
I can work like a dog one day and hardly do a thing the next. On those days, I stride up and down the room like a madman while I'm being consumed by the desire to give shape to a grand idea without the ability to do so. For instance, I'm working on a drawing of trees. The result strongly conveys the idea of a procession, a stately row of trees walking hither from far away across the hills, and which, after climbing the last hill, suddenly stands before us, gigantic and threatening. Beautiful idea, and it's there in the drawing, but not nearly as strong as I feel it. I take comfort in the thought that a man will probably never be able to visualize an idea as strongly as he feels it himself. I like to draw here, in the St. Bavo in Harlem. Being able to bathe in the organ's thundering abundance of sounds gives me an overwhelming emotion. The stormy wind rushed through the pipes of the organ, and a thunderous voice proclaimed the glory of God. Then a young man lay down on his back on the big, cold stones. The thundering wind rushed through the pipes of the organ until the pillars of the church could not bear the sound any more than he could. Organ grew a lot bigger, its pipes stretching from the heavens to the earth, and the young man felt such a strong wind that he rose from the stones and flew into the air. And then I am admitted to hospital for observation. My gastroenterologist deems my situation hopeless and expects my complete and utter demise within a day or 3, followed by a solemn funeral. Or maybe that's putting it a bit too harsh. I have to regain my strength, set out on my journey. Without clouds, the sky is blue. That's something I've known for a long time. But the first time I saw the light blue of the sky above the hills of Tuscany, it was framed by dark cypresses. The blueness of the sky is incomprehensible to me. As blue as... yes, as what? Bluer than the Mediterranean Sea, bluer than the blue of the Dutch flag. Bluer than snow is white and pitch is black. I cannot describe the curious feeling this lovely beauty gives me. My poor eyes are staring and my poor brain is trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. Rarely, if ever, have I felt more calm, pleasant, and comfortable than lately. Many wondrous prints spring from my industrious hands. I leave it to posterity to judge whether these contain beauty. I set woodcutting aside for a while to improve my drawing skills. I want to learn to look and see better whilst I am drawing. I want to enjoy the tiniest details, such as a 1-inch diameter plant on a piece of rock. I want to try to draw these as accurately as possible. With your nose right on top of it, you see all of its beauty and all of its simplicity. But when you start drawing, only then do you realize how terribly complicated and shapeless that beauty really is. It is so terribly difficult. A small piece of rock. It's beautiful, but there's nothing to hold on to. There is no form that can be captured. It simply goes on in all directions, and you don't know where to begin and where to end. So nothing comes of it, of course. And I won't even start with all the beautiful little flowers. Colour is indispensable for that, and I don't want to colour. In the spring of 1923, I stay in Ravello, which is situated on a hill, surrounded by the foaming and rippling waves of the azure Old World Sea. There, on a blissful afternoon, in the little hotel where I've settled in, 3 new guests join me at my table. A gentleman, his wife, and his daughter, Yeta Umika, 24 years old. They've been expelled from Russia by the Bolsheviks, leaving behind all their possessions. Russia has left its mark on her, as much mentally as physically, because she has suffered from hunger and seen too many people being murdered. She exerts an influence on me, similar to that of an electromagnet on a scrappy piece of cast iron. Although I decided to keep my feelings hidden, her influence finally becomes so powerful that on the last day before her departure, the piece of cast iron loses its last remaining mental capabilities and slams into the magnet with a dull thud. While we are out on a walk together, I open up my heart to her. prettiest and softest things you possess, besides your heart, are your hands. They touch me. Your long fingers, like those of a thief, have stolen my heart. Why have they chosen it? Yesterday afternoon, I escorted Jette and her parents to the train station where she left for Switzerland. I feel left behind here, miserable and lonely. I can be alone the whole day because when I'm cutting wood, it sets my light, fantastical thoughts in motion. But in the evening, when my great longing for Jette overwhelms me, the loneliness becomes unbearable. Then I walk through the narrow streets and think of the ever so sad life she is leading, and of the possibility that I might make that life happier.
Mijn ouders die trouwden in 1924 in Viareggio. En in 1925 zijn ze naar Rome verhuisd. En daar hebben ze dus 10 jaar lang gewoond, min of meer. En daar woonden we in een 3 verdiepingen huis. Mijn vaders atelier het hoogste laag bezette. En wij zelf woonden op de 2e verdieping. En daar brachten we mijn broer Arthur en ik de meeste tijd door. Aan het atelier vond ik het meest interessante het werken van vader zelf op zijn werktafel. Ik was toen nog te klein om op de tafel te kunnen kijken. Dan lag ik om te kruipen op de vloer en dan vlogen de splinters perenhout om mijn oren heen als ik dat zat te snijden in het hout. Maar het belangrijkste dat ik me herinner is eigenlijk de geur. De geur van de drukinkt, als die begon af te drukken, was heerlijk. Tegenwoordige inkt ruikt lang zo lekker niet meer.
I like to sketch in the evening in Rome. The wondrous, beautiful, nocturnal Rome that I love so much more than the same architecture during the day. All the excessive Baroque frills that Rome is filled with fade at night. Moreover, the modern indirect lighting with large floodlights helps to increase the fantastic effect. So I draw every evening and finish the sketch on wood the next day. I know no greater joy than to wander through valleys and over hills, from village to village, to feel the artlessness of nature affect me, and enjoy the unexpected and never thought of in the greatest possible contrast with everyday life at home. On my journeys, everything seems real. But when you remember it later, you realize that it was like a dream. When I remember a scent, a feeling, or a sound, the emotion sometimes becomes too strong for me. there is the delightful fact of knowingly abstaining from the comfort we are used to at home. Unpleasant things, such as a bed not free of vermin or food of lesser quality, even become part of the enjoyment. I often think of undertaking such journeys in the company of my sons one day. For children, it must be the greatest joy imaginable.
La fiera del Levante è una realizzazione superba di vari fascista.
De laatste paar jaar in Italië werd ik meer en meer beïnvloed door de fascistische ideeën en al die propaganda. Ik wilde meedoen met al die fascistische gedoe van de vriendjes. Marcheren, een zwarte pet op. En dat vonden mijn ouders eigenlijk helemaal niet leuk. En toen ik 10 jaar oud was, hebben vader en moeder besloten dat ze het land uit wilden. Omdat ik niet als kleine fascist opgroeide.
That winter, we were in the Swiss mountains in that horrendous white, snowy misery I cannot stand. I hate that white shroud covering the earth. One night, when we'd just gone to bed, the sound Yetta's hair made as she was plaiting it in the dark reminded me of the sound of a boat when it breasts a quiet sea. A great longing for the sea took control of me. Suddenly, I came up with the idea to write a letter to an Italian merchant shipping company that operated a service around Italy to Valencia in Spain. I proposed that Yetta and myself would come along as passengers for free. In return, I would make 12 prints for them based on sketches made during the journey in order to advertise their tourist transport. To my astonishment, after a few days, I received a letter of approval. I drew like a maniac, was perfectly pampered, 1 liter of wine a day, and lived the life of a prince on this floating house that brought me to a new port every day without any lugging. It was delightful. In Valencia, we disembarked for a 3-week journey across southern Spain at our own expense. In Granada, we visited the Alhambra. In this wonderful, aristocratic work of art, we spent 3 days copying passionately. The palaces were full of visitors who formed a large audience around us while we were drawing. What fascinates me in the tiles of the Alhambra is the discovery of a motif that repeats itself according to a certain system. In Harlem, I already enjoyed giving meaning to the entire surface of a piece of paper. By this, I mean to say that I don't want to draw the head of a person against the background of a room, for example. No, besides the head, the background should have as much meaning as the head itself, thus becoming another head. It was a first attempt to systematize, although at the time I didn't really understand what I was doing. I was disheartened, so I abandoned this puzzle. I was completely inexperienced, and no one on earth could help me. Wall and floor mosaics at the Alhambra stem from the same thought, albeit the Moors only used geometric figures. What a pity the Moors didn't use figures derived from nature, such as building blocks, fish, birds, reptiles, or humans. Recognizability is so important to me that I've never been able to do without it.
Toen ze het Alhambra hadden bezocht en weer teruggingen naar Zwitserland, kwam mijn vader vooral weer in die sneeuw en wilde weg. En toen besloten ze naar België te gaan. Het was een onrustige periode. Het was de periode dat Hitler in Duitsland begon te ageren enzovoorts. En ondanks dat het zo'n onrustige periode was, was het eigenlijk de periode dat mijn vader zijn meer bekende werken heeft gemaakt. Ik denk ook omdat hij voor het eerst in zijn leven niet meer kon reizen. Hij zat stil in zijn atelier, zat in zijn handen, hij wilde wat maken en begon aan andere dingen te denken.
I had left Italy. I lost the Italian landscape and architecture, and something else had to take its place. This stimulated the formation of inner images. I started working with passion when I discovered that I had things of my own that had to come out, that I could express something others don't have. I am 40, the age at which most people are at their best. For me, this is the richest of times. I showed my brother, a geologist, some tessellation motifs. He was interested in my motifs from a more scientific point of view and told me that I was unknowingly applying a kind of two-dimensional crystallography. He advised me to read up on it, but most of the articles were far too difficult, dry, and theoretical for me. Still, my understanding became clearer, and I began to see the possibilities offered by the regular division of the plane. For the first time, I dared to create compositions based on the problem of expressing endlessness within a limited plane. An endless series of three-dimensional men is rushing down the stairs. Gradually, they lose their plasticity as they freeze, flatten, and turn into the motif of a regularly organized tessellation. Their motif simplifies upwards towards its original form, the diamond. 3 diamonds in white, grey, and black together form a cube, and thus regain their plasticity. The cube turns into a block, a house, and from the house, a human product. The people reappear to endlessly repeat their cycle. The familiar tile floor motif on the terraces is the same original motif again. The diamond, the link between 2 and 3 dimensions, the idea upon which the entire composition is built. The landscape behind the houses is intended as a maximum of naturalness, in contrast to the mathematical tessellation at the bottom of the print. The print Day and Night is a similar kind of cycle. The judgment of acquaintances and friends makes me feel that this is strange to them, and they don't know what to think of it. The reception is not conducive to the enthusiasm with which I am painstakingly tinkering and searching in this direction. I fear that other prints will be a disappointment as well, because in those I deviate, even more so than in Day and Night, from a desire for aesthetic satisfaction. The mathematical interest is becoming so dominant that I'm wondering whether it is still trying to be art and whether it even belongs at an art exhibition. As a little boy lying in bed at night, I would enjoy playing with associative thoughts. For example, I would say, how can I find the logical connection between the letter S and the tail of my dog? 1,000 ways to get there. For example, S, sky, bird, nest, branch, tree, garden, dog, tail. I played a lot of these games, and actually I haven't got much further. I've merely found a way to express these thoughts visually. The regular hexagon, honeycomb, bee. A new factor has been added to this, a direct association of shape. A fish whose background turns into a bird. So it's a mishmash that lacks all profoundness. It is and remains the game of a child. And sensible people are welcome to consider it trivial. The best way for me to express my association mania would be in an animated film. In the future, the animated film will become an artistic expression of great value, showing more important thoughts than Snow White or Mickey, although I have no contempt for these products at all. On the contrary, admiration for Disney's talent. I often dream of the film I would like to make. The astonishing metamorphoses you would see then. Sadly, there would be no audience for it, as I would most certainly bore people to death with it. Since the complete exclusion of the Jews, I feel increasingly uncomfortable when I exhibit my work. It feels like I'm profiteering. And if I'm not mistaken, all visual artists will be forced to join the Chamber of Culture. Otherwise, they will not be able to exhibit their work. I've cancelled my membership of the Artist Society Poultry and the Graphic Association myself. I think that will be clear enough. Here, in Barn, I hardly know anyone, and I don't know a lot of colleagues either. No matter how satisfied I am with the isolation in which we live here, at this moment, I would like to have a bit more human contact. I have developed the tessellation pattern of white optimists and black pessimists into a complete morality tale. One white and one black representative of each type free themselves from the grey surface of the back wall and walk into space. They avoid tumbling into the round hole in the middle, so they're bound to meet each other in the foreground. The black pessimist continues to raise his warning finger until the end, but the white optimist cheerfully comes to his encounter, and they end up shaking hands. I had many Jewish friends. My old teacher, de Mesquita, he refused to go into hiding. One night, they were all taken away. In 44, during the hunger winter, the neighbors said, "Haven't you heard? The Mesquitas have been taken away." I entered their home. This print was lying on the floor with the nail prints of the German boots on it. And in his studio, everything was turned upside down. I took home 200 prints. These things cannot be forgotten. Taken away in the middle of the night. And every now and then the image looms up before me like a nightmare. When in the night, escaped from the narcosis of sleep, my opened eyes stare into unfathomable depths of darkness, the birds of despair come flying on slow wings.
Het was dus een moeilijke periode. En mijn moeder verloor gewicht, want het eten werd gespaard. De kinderen kwamen op de eerste plaats. Maar ze was happy, want ze voelde zich nuttig in haar leven. Ze deed wat voor de familie. Ze kon merken dat ze gewaardeerd werd. Het was eigenlijk de laatste, de gelukkige periode van haar leven... was gedurende de oorlog. Nou ja, gelukkig tussen aanhalingstekens. Tijdens al die oorlogsjaren heeft mijn vader moeten zorgen de familie te beschermen en eten te vinden. Dus hij had geen tijd meer voor andere dingen.
We had a single rickety bike with makeshift tires, which I rode to Overijssel through the bitter cold wind and rain. Those journeys upset me very much. I saw such an awful lot of suffering. I will never forget it. But I could keep our family on its feet, even though my wife is now in bad shape. However, I wasn't able to get any work done, and that was the bitterest pill I had to swallow. After the war, I retired to my studio. My sons now take care of the food supply. My wife is too weak to do much herself, besides cooking.
Mijn schoonmoeder werd zwaarmoediger en zwaarmoediger in Nederland. Maar ze had dus hele goede dagen en ook hele slechte dagen. De goede dagen was ze een hele vriendelijke, aardige vrouw. Erg lief ook. Dat kon je merken als ze in haar gewone doen was, zeg maar. Als ze een slechte dag had, dan was ze in een hele andere wereld en kon je nauwelijks contact met haar krijgen. En bovendien, als je niet werkt buiten de deur, kom je ook weinig in contact met andere mensen. En vader leefde dus ook vrij geïsoleerd.
Finally, I am working again. It takes more effort than ever before. My brain seems to be completely dazed, but at least I'm doing something again. Originally, the intention of the eye was nothing more than a general interest in the human eye. But since the viewer always sees himself reflected in the eye he is looking at, I thought I would show the reflection of a skull as a variant of the prints with mirroring spheres. Because we are all, whether we want it or not, looking at death, and he is looking back at us. God almighty, I wish I would learn to draw a little better. What exertion and determination it takes to try and do it well. Every now and then I'm close to delirium from pure nerves. It is really only a matter of dogged persistence with continuous, pitiless self-criticism. Talent and such is actually just hogwash for the most part. Any schoolboy with a little aptitude will perhaps be better at drawing than I am. But what he most often lacks is the tough yearning for realization, the teeth-grinding stubbornness, and saying, even though I know I cannot do it, I want to do it anyway. The puddle is uncharacteristically impressionistic for me, but the symbol is so strong and striking in itself, and every time it is such a consolation to see the sky in the puddle again, that it did not come to my mind to change anything in the image as it occurs on a forest or country road. It was not my intention to draw a particular puddle on a particular country road, but the puddle that can be found anywhere, all over the world.
Naarmate de jaren verstreken werd mijn vader langzamerhand bekender en bekender, vooral in Nederland. En op een zeker moment kreeg hij een telefoontje van een journalist die hem graag wilde bezoeken van Time Life. Dus die man is gekomen samen met een fotograaf en hebben een hele mooie foto's van hem gemaakt, geïnterviewd. En toen, na het einde van dat interview, toen zei mijn vader, ik krijg altijd wat salaris voor wat ik gezegd heb. Kunt u me ook wat geven? Toen zei hij van Time Life, nee, dat kan ik helaas niet. Maar wacht u nou even af tot het artikel is gepubliceerd. En dan zult u waarschijnlijk wel een reactie merken. En inderdaad, dat gebeurde dus ook. Er kwam plotseling geld in huis. Mijn vader had eerst dus min of meer geleefd van geldrente van zijn ouders. Dat was opgedroogd tijdens de Tweede Wereldoorlog vooral. En toen kwam dat artikel van Time Life.
This creature, Pedaltonora movens centroculatus articulosis, popularly known as curl-up, was born out of dissatisfaction. The idea came to me when I was riding my bicycle. I thought, how absurd. I am rolling over the ground on wheels, which is much easier than on foot. God has forgotten to create the wheel, and he has also forgotten to create animals that can use their bodies as a wheel or hoop to move themselves forward. I am meeting this need with the design of this curl-up. Biological details are not yet known. Nothing can be said with certainty about its reproduction. Three surfaces of the Earth intersect at a right angle, and people live on each of them. Two inhabitants of different worlds cannot live on the same floor, as their notion of what is horizontal and vertical is not the same. However, they can use the same staircase, but with one person ascending and the other descending. Contact between the two is impossible, for they live in different worlds and therefore cannot have any knowledge of each other's existence.
Toen mijn vader het portret van mijn moeder had gemaakt, waar je haar ziet als een omhulsel, toen was hij ontevreden met het resultaat. Want wat hem hinderde was dat die lint van die omhulsel een begin had en een einde. Mijn vader wilde liefst altijd iets maken wat met elkaar verbonden was. Dus hij dacht, hoe kan ik daar wat aan doen? En toen dacht hij, moet er een tweede persoon naast komen, want dan kan ik die schil door laten lopen naar de tweede persoon. En dan beneden aan kan die band weer opgepikt worden door dat portret van mijn moeder. En dat heeft hij dus gedaan. En de grote vraag was, wie wilde die daarnaast maken? En toen zeiden wij tegen hem, dat moet je natuurlijk zelf zijn. Dat heeft hij dus ook gedaan en hij heeft het zelfs gedaan dat die banden in elkaar haken. Daar blijkt dus uit dat, ondanks dat er problemen in het huwelijk waren, dat hij dus heel veel van haar hield. Maar hij was dus wel enorm bedroefd dat ze zo'n moeite had met haar psychologische problemen, dat hij zo weinig heeft kunnen helpen. En hij verwijtte zich ook dat hij eigenlijk voelde dat hij misschien meer tijd aan haar had moeten geven. Maar aan de andere kant was hij door zijn werk opgeslokt en hij kon het niet laten. Dat was dus een soort opium voor hem.
Like a madman, I have thrown myself into the printing of old engravings again. That damn job simply has to be done, periodically. Half dazed by continuous radio sounds, I'm ploughing my way through this pile of printing ink. I am smitten by Bach's music. A short motif that repeats itself in various ways, identically, in a different key, back to front or upside down. They are almost mathematical figures. It has a lot in common with my motifs, which also repeat themselves endlessly. In both, there is a compelling rhythm, a cadence in search of a certain endlessness. This feeling of kinship is so strong that I often get inspired when I'm listening to Bach. There is an undeniable connection. I attended a performance of the St. Matthew Passion in Naarden. My eyes wandered past the walls, columns, arches and vaults of that high, wide, immovable church. Immovable? Suddenly, it became clear to me that this church was far from immovable. My imagination, enlivened by the constant stream of beautiful sounds that came to us, saw the globe with the Naarden church on it rotating in the universe. First, I saw the old Naarden fort as a more than 5-armed starfish. Then I flew to the coast, crossed the channel, and before long, I found myself above the grey, turbulent Atlantic Ocean. At the latitude of New York, I reached the American mainland. And fortunately so, because it was gloomy. cold and rough above the ocean. I cannot give a clear description of the sight of the United States, but I do know that it was cheerful and bright there, with lots of sun on snow-capped mountains. Near San Francisco, I ended up above the ocean again. I saw Honolulu from afar, then a whole lot of cheerful water again, and finally, straight across the dense, humid jungles of New Guinea, Celebes, and the Borneo coast. How I came back again, I do not know. The fact is that I suddenly found myself sitting on my kitchen chair in the Naarden church again, just when they were singing at the top of their voices, "We sit down in tears." Completely mal apropos, as I felt surprisingly cheerful and satisfied. Meanwhile, I have finished a new lithograph. I believe I have never made anything as strange as this one in my life. Among other things, it depicts a young man attentively looking at a print on the wall of an exhibition, which is a picture of himself. How can this be? Maybe I am not so far removed from Einstein's curved universe. I've made an effort to explain the smaller and smaller print to visitors, but it's becoming increasingly clear that people are insensitive to the beauty of this infinite world within a defined plane. Most people simply don't understand what it's about. This is ever more sad to me because I'm working on the next version, which is meant to far exceed the first. Although, in theory, the infinitely small in size and infinitely large in number is reached in the center, this work only partially satisfies. It remains a fragment, because outwards the pattern is arbitrarily limited. However, my great enthusiasm for these kinds of depictions and my fixation on my investigations might eventually lead me to a satisfying discovery. I found an image by the Canadian mathematician Coxeter that will probably help me.
One way to bring infinity to finite terms is by the transformation called inversion, so that it is on the same diameter.
But the hocus-pocus of his words are no good to me. No matter how much effort it takes, it's all the more fulfilling for me to solve such a problem myself, in my own clumsy way. A circular, regular tessellation, logically bounded on all sides by the infinitesimal, is a thing of miraculous beauty. limit. The entire world is contained in it. It is a successful attempt at visualizing infinity, and it represents a milestone in my development. Deeply saddening and hangover-inducing remains the fact that I'm starting to speak a language that is understood by very few people. This only increases my loneliness. After all, I do not belong anywhere anymore. I'm too stupid to live as a scientist. I'm not an artist either. I hover between mathematics and art.
It's just pure creation.
Shall we take a look at some paradoxical architecture? You're gonna have to master a few tricks if you're gonna build 3 complete dream levels. Excuse me.
What kind of tricks?
In a dream, you can cheat architecture into impossible shapes. That lets you create closed loops, like the Penrose steps, the infinite staircase.
I'm working on the design of a new print, with a staircase that keeps ascending, or descending, if you will. It is a closed, ring-shaped thing, and yet the perspective is correct. There is a great number of human figures walking on it in 2 directions. One line is arduously climbing up to infinity, while the other endlessly descends. A sad, pessimistic subject, this staircase, but very profound and absurd. People do not like to talk about their descents, but all the more about their climbs.
Paradox.
I've been officially invited to give a lecture and exhibit my work at a conference for crystallographers in America. Fine kettle of fish. I don't know anything about crystallography in a scientific sense, but apparently they are reveling in my fantasies. Well, I guess I should go then. No better means of transport, and no better lodging than a cargo boat if you want some peace and quiet. For weeks, no need to assume any responsibilities, out of reach of the telephone and letters, no longer having to read the newspapers or hear the news reports. As a result, you acquire a receptivity that allows you to really wonder again. You feel disconnected, not only from worries, but also from the firmness of the Earth's crust. Then you start to observe that infinite variation of waves and undulations, and you see the living creatures in and above the sea, the fish and the birds, and you finally look at the celestial, heavenly bodies again, the sun, the moon, and the stars. In the sultry night, you can lie stretched out on your back on a tarpaulin, and if you bring a flashlight and a star chart, you can easily commit the eternal figures of the constellations to memory and call them by their names. And the moon, while she was looking down on me like a big lamp, high above the sea, I was so amazed at the distance between her and me. Breathless with wonder, I was subjected to her silence, her apparent immobility, her motionless balance in space. She became a symbol to me, or rather a demonstration of gravity, which is not a boring concept, but a living, gripping incomprehensibility.
In 1962 ontdekten ze bij toeval dat hij darmkanker had. En die ziekte heeft hem dus tot aan zijn dood toe achtervolgd. En hij is dus vaker en vaker opnieuw geopereerd. Moe, vele maanden niet kunnen werken. En het was ook een moeilijke periode voor mijn moeder. Die probeerde om hem te verzorgen. Maar zij zelf was dus mentaal ziek en het was allemaal moeilijk. En op een zeker moment, eind 60, werd het te veel voor haar.
En toen kregen we een telefoontje. Ze is op weg naar jullie. Maar wij woonden heel klein. We hadden de onderetage van een chalet, vlakbij het meer van Genève, tussen Lausanne en Morges in. En ja, het was dus wel een beetje behelpen.
En ze heeft dus een aantal maanden bij een vrouw en mij gewoond. En daarna is ze opgenomen in een verplegingstehuis voor oude mensen. En heeft toen nog een aantal jaren geleefd in Zwitserland. Ouder geworden dan mijn vader. Mijn vader was aan de ene kant blij dat hij niet meer die last had van met mijn moeder op haar te passen en al de problemen die er gaf. Maar aan de andere kant was hij natuurlijk triest dat zijn vrouw hem eigenlijk verlaten had.
At home, I am working feverishly, but I'm constantly disturbed by the many foreigners at our door and the growing amount of correspondence. Mr. Mick Jagger asking me to design a picture or to place at his disposal unpublished work to reproduce on the cover sleeve for an LP record. My answer to both questions must be no, as I want to devote all my time and attention to the many commitments I made. By the way, please tell Mr. Jagger I am not Maurits to him, but very sincerely, MC Escher. These orgies of colour were clandestinely printed in California. I got hold of the horrendous results through the mediation of a friendly customer. The bright colours are entirely at the expense of the publisher, who is undoubtedly speculating on the taste of today's youth. They were printed with fluorescent ink and will really come to life in ultraviolet light. I only know this from hearsay, because I have never verified it. Palm, from 1933, never had a lot of success, but was recently elevated to the dignity of a poster in colours so shrill they hurt your eyes. What on earth does this young generation see in my work? Doesn't it lack all the qualities that are hip these days? It is cerebral and rationalized instead of wild and sexy. And how can they reconcile it with their addiction to narcotics? But why not let those Californian students and hippies buy a color poster for a small amount of money? My prints are not only much too expensive, they are also too sober in tone for the taste of many modern youths, who are usually as fond of the screaming colours on their walls as they are of the screaming coming out of their record players.
crystal clear above the skies. Ducks and pigs and chickens come. Animal carpet wall to wall. American made is 5 foot tall. Blue. Sweeping cobwebs from the edges of my mind.
I've always tried to be an observant person. I've always tried to remain open all around. I'm constantly seeing things, you know. But Escher's work made me see differently. One of the things about Escher's work is that it bears studying. You know, you have an overall appreciation of the piece, but when you get deep into the piece and see what's going on, it becomes even more miraculous. So Escher taught me to see differently, and I'm very thankful for that. I think one of the last pieces I ever saw of Escher's was snakes. I think that may have been one of the last pieces that he did. And he was not a young man when he finished that. And that is stunning.
I am handicapped by my health, which takes a lot of time every day. In the meantime, I try to reprint woodcuts. I did not feel free enough from worry to start working on new ideas, and am content with that old métier. It calms the soul. Doing this work gives me the sad feeling of getting old. Because who would spend his time chewing and mulling over things he made years and years ago? It is not a creative activity, but really a process of going over old ground. A prerequisite for a good print, and by good, I mean a print that resonates with a relatively large audience, is that no hocus-pocus is practiced without a very sound and effortless connection with reality. What I can say is that no print ever succeeds. They all fail, simply because I always pursue a vision that cannot be realized. My prints, none of which were ever made with the primary aim of making something beautiful, simply cause me headaches. That is the reason why I never feel fully at home amongst my colleagues. They pursue beauty first and foremost. Perhaps I only pursue wonder.
I really believe that the high-end art world is going to rediscover Escher. And I think that his artwork is going to be appreciated for what it really is. Stunning work. And I think the rest of the world is going to have to catch up to Escher's work. I think it will transcend into the future brilliantly. The crazier this place gets, the noisier this place gets, you know, the more his work is really interesting. He's going to be much more appreciated in the coming years. I really feel it.